All right. Hey, welcome to the first podcast of Video Game Collectors. My name is Matt Rose, and I'll be your host. Joining us today is Deniz Khan and Josh Byerly.
Howdy.
Howdy.
And as a collective three, we are together video game collectors. Let me get that straight.
There's nobody else.
There's nobody else, just
Nobody
us.
else collects video games.
And you might ask, why are we doing this? Why are we doing another video game podcast? Well, with the history and the knowledge combined of Josh and Deniz, we have, and a little bit of me in some areas, we definitely have knowledge that a lot of people aren't sharing. And it concerns us to agree because we are collectors at heart. We all love and are very passionate about video games. And we want to get that information out there because us holding it in doesn't do any collective good for everybody. And the more informed you are, the better decisions you can make in just buying or collecting in general. And knowledge is power. So that's our thought. And we're passionate about video games. So we just want to talk about it on a podcast since we talk about it all day, every day anyway. And we'll just share some of our thoughts. If you agree, great. If you don't, that's okay. Just leave your comments below.
Yeah, I think it's not just the knowledge, but it's the insight. Just, so much of what I see, and I stay off social media for a lot of different reasons. But I see a lot of misinformation, but more importantly, a lot of the just talking is the dialogue is it's all very subjective. And so I think that each of us brings sort of a different kind of perspective. At least like there's a lot of times that I look and see things and I'm like, well, I think that's, what about this? What about this? Just bringing different insights. So it's not saying that, hey, we have answers necessarily, but we're going to talk about a lot of things that maybe aren't even being discussed. Right.
And just to get people off on the right foot with this, since this will be a first podcast, Deniz, give us a little bit of your backstory. Who are you? What do you do? Why do people who don't collect video games, why do they need to trust what you're saying?
Well, they don't need to.
Or why should they?
I don't trust them.
we all refer to you, so.
Well, my role is I am one of the founders and president of WADA Games, which is getting a lot of attention as the go-to certification company in video game for video game collectors. I have been collecting things since I was yay high, little kid. But I started getting really into video games, which were always a big part of my life and my childhood. I started getting into the collecting side of it when I was around 11, 12. Up to that point, I was exposed to the comic collecting industry through my dad because it wasn't his job, but he was a collector and he would take me to shows as a kid. So that's where I got exposed to that. And then, we all kind of met, which we should say through a forum, Nintendo Age. And Matt, you and I later on, but I've known Josh. Josh was around when I joined in 2008. So I was like 15 or something at that time.
What was your Nintendo Age handle?
Well, I was Pyro1290 when I joined. Very quickly, that was my name I used in Red Alert too. Because I thought I was a badass when I was 10 playing Red Alert. But I quickly changed that to Super NES Man, which is what I go by on Instagram, on Nintendo Age, which is now defunct, sadly.
But it's coming back, so stay tuned.
Where did the name come from, Super NES Man?
It was it was born out of my love for the Super NES, which is what the first system I played. But I kind of left it ambiguous. People would say, "Are you the Super NES man, or are you the Super NES man?" And the irony is that now I'm one game away from completing my Game Boy set. I completed my N64 set. I completed my NES set. and I still am really not even close to completing my Super Nintendo set. And that's what I set out to do when I started collecting. I got kind of distracted.
Yeah.
That's a big set. That's a big set to fill. Josh, what
but
about
enough about
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you guys go ahead.
Okay. I'm Josh. I started collecting probably in '98. Seriously collecting. Before that, I would always save my old video game systems, and just I wouldn't really sell stuff. I think I sold my original set of Nintendo NES games at a flea market for $5 a piece, and I must have been, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. It taught me a lot about sales, but I was immediately depressed when they left, and I never did get those games back. So after that, I never really sold my games, my personal games that I was given or got as a kid. And since then, I'd say I've been a collector, So I got my driver's license the day after I turned 16. And I immediately drove over to a friend's house and bought all of his video games from when he was a kid. So then I kept doing that. I kept trading video games all through high school with kids and friends. And after that, started buying out video rental stores and building my collection and selling to fund my addiction with that. And in the meantime, found great forums like Digital Press. It was probably, I was a sophomore in high school, so probably 1999. And from there, Digital Press kind of died off and it splintered into different forum sects. So there was a couple other ones. People went to NES World, and then Nintendo Age came about from that with Dane and a couple other friends from NES World. And then that was kind of the thing from there. And I built my collection up, almost had every game for NES, and went to school and decided I was going to travel. So I sold everything off, and
you
built it back up.
Dysentery in Africa.
Yeah, I got dysentery in Africa, and Giardia as well. I was really sick, but
and you
had
went,
a great time.
You went by what?
Kixmaster.
There we go.
Kixmaster was founded out of my love for the Beastie Boys and the Game Kicks, Mixmaster Mike, and all that stuff. So yeah, and I'm not really that good at kicks. I'm probably better at Mario 3 if I had to pick a game that I could beat anybody in. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. And now I collect. I'm a dealer full time. I work out of the basement of my home, and that's where we're at. And I'm thankful for a place like WADA to exist because I'm really a collector at heart. And I've been able to create a lifestyle and a job every day out of being a collector and a dealer, which is great. So
awesome, man.
Yeah.
Conflict of interest. We can't be talking about this.
Well, it's our podcast.
I am the face of your company. I am on your website.
Since it's our podcast, we can talk about whatever the hell we want.
And I can say whatever I want to people, which is great. Running your own business. It might not be the smartest thing, but I say what I feel, which is that's who I am.
And that's kind of the point of this, is so we can just let loose and not have any restrictions. So
yeah.
Well,
especially for me. Yeah, like I was touching on earlier. I don't put myself out there, so I'm viewing this as an opportunity to, have a little more liberty in what I'm able to share and say.
And people should be asking, people should take advantage of that. And when they see a podcast of ours or whatever, ask questions, leave comments, let us know what you want to see. These two specifically, I'm just going to build them up. Yeah, they're my friends, but they're all also very, very, very knowledgeable. Like if I have a question about anything, I go to one of these two. And I personally know, gosh, so many people in the collecting industry, and these two are still my go-to for questions.
Now, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Halo.
All right. Well, I may not have the level of knowledge as these guys do, but I got started in game collecting I started briefly in about 2004, 2005. I just bought my favorite games, like Baseball Stars, stuff like that. Didn't take it seriously. Later, about 2009, I got the itch to buy Mega Man because I was like, man, I should add that to my collection. And I found Nintendo Age through actually Joan Bone. I saw a post, he was selling something, and I saw it was on Nintendo Age. That brought me there, which that same year, I actually met Josh because I love Nintendo Age. It was fantastic. I met Josh that year at the Gaming Expo up in Portland. And I brought that sealed Game Boy.
Yeah, that's where I remember you from, is you posted on Nintendo Age and said that you found a brand new Game Boy, or your mom did an estate sale.
Yeah.
And you wanted to know the value.
Up in the attic. It was a gift that somebody put in the attic that forgot was there, and she pulled it down and was still sealed. And and then and of course I remember seeing Deniz posting posts and getting ribbed by a few other people left and right, and
well, when you're 7 years old on internet forum.
But I didn't actually know him, and I didn't really meet him until many years later at a Portland Retro Gaming Expo. And just a super genuine, super great guy. But a little more on my background. So I started collecting in 2009, just buying games that I loved. And I saw what was happening, and VGA had just came out at the time. And I just got the bug to collect and just to reminisce about games that I loved. And then also at the time, you could still buy games that you'd never played when you were young, because they were all like $50 a piece. So, you had to make your selection when you were buying games, and it was just fun to buy them. And then I got into sealed games, and then I said, well, I love Halo. And I just started collecting Halo left and right, and ended up building quite the collection. I mean, you can see a Master Chief in the background, a bunch of Halo posters.
Yep.
And
any other question that Matt, whenever we have a question about Halo, we just ask Matt, because that's the person who knows everything about Halo.
Yeah. I wouldn't say everything, but I was a part of a group of hardcore collectors for quite a few years, and then that kind of split apart. And but I've been collecting Halo since 2009 on, anything and everything, and just about.
Did you see that picture
everything.
I sent you today? That massive Halo statue?
That is awesome. And
that was ridiculous.
Yeah, that's actually the first time I've seen that. I don't have anywhere.
One off?
There's 5 of them.
They were for E3 for Halo Reach, and they're
10 foot
like
tall.
8 feet tall. 10 foot tall. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't have room for that. But
sure you do.
Yeah, but
yeah, lawn ornament. Come on.
Lawn.
Yeah, with all that, to give just a touch more, I got into digital marketing, and so I build websites, I do search engine optimization, stuff like that, and so I kind of play kind of a digital role in this, helping put together hopefully a future website for us, and some other various things. So yeah, I get to play video games all day long and geek out on the computer. That's my story.
Yeah. What's your name on Nintendo Age?
That's right. I think it was MCM Rose on there.
Yeah.
That's also my
5 after it or something.
I thought it was a 10.
10?
No,
maybe it didn't have a number.
I think it was MCM Rose on Nintendo Age, and then it's same thing on Instagram and everything else.
It was all caps, though.
I think it's MCM Rose 1 on Instagram.
He was yelling at you. Remember my name.
Although I never used it as a gamer tag. It was always Dark Side for Xbox
Rose.
gamer tags.
Ooh, spooky.
With an X, not a K, because that was taken.
Sorry.
Dark X Side. So if I've ever teabagged you, I apologize ahead of time. I'm actually a nice guy.
Matt's probably one of the better people out there. Yeah.
Matt is one of the most stand-up, honest people I know in this hobby.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Okay. Now, Deniz, you have something you wanted to bring up and talk about for our first episode. What is that?
I think it's because it's gonna spawn a lot of discussion. It's a really broad topic, but it's also one that I don't think people have really addressed directly. But it comes up a lot, which is demand, the word demand, right? Like
Mhm.
it's thrown around so much. And sometimes just because, for lack of a better word, but other times because people are trying to give their own takes on what is demand and what causes demand in this hobby. So I think that it's appropriate to just start by addressing that. What is demand for video games, for collectible video games? What in if this was, a macroeconomics class, what is the formula that is going into the demand of this specific hobby, right?
Yeah, what drives an Atari game from one day being $40 to $400 or whatever it may be, Atari, Nintendo,
Right.
whatever.
Anything. Yeah. Any game, any system, any console, whatever we're talking about. I think that if we can establish a foundation, it'll be something that we can use in future discussions. The foundation of what is actually going into what are the different variables in the equation. I have my own thoughts, and I know that we've talked about it before, but not in this sort of forum. So I'd love to put it out there and for us to just kind of openly talk about it.
Yeah. Well, when I think about demand, I mean, we can think like, oh, there's the first Mario game or the first Zelda game. That's an obvious thing. But for coming from the collectibles side of things, yeah, sure, we all wanted a Zelda when we first started collecting. We all wanted a Mega Man, and they were easy to get. We weren't necessarily looking for sealed games. So for the collector-based side of things, a lot of the demand started being driven, was the driving force behind demand was a lot of times rarity. And so that's why certain things like stadium events or even Myriad back in the day, those really took hold and took off in price because everybody was wanting one of those items for their sets because they could get everything else at the time. I think we've seen a shift in that recently, but ultimately, I think rarity is one of the factors.
Completely, totally.
Just based on my experience. So.
No, I mean, no. Rarity is actually one of the most misconflate. Like people will conflate rarity with demand itself, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas rarity is just one variable. Now in video games, I think that it plays a very critical role in demand, not so much as in other collectibles. So if you're talking about coins, rarity plays a much bigger role, right? Now, we're going to be doing this a lot. We're going to be making parallels to a lot of different collectible hobbies. And the reason that the first one I'm going to do, and the reason it's going to keep coming up, which is comic books, I feel is because we have to also make clear that video games are a pop culture collectible item. They're pop. Right. They're a collectible for something pop culture related, which is very different than coins. It's very different than I don't know, less different, I guess, than maybe luxury cars or furniture, right? Coins have more of a there's a historical element. It doesn't capture what meant something to us in American pop culture primarily, right? Whereas comic books are, as are video games. I feel like those are comic books have been the largest pop culture collectible. Now we're seeing video games, and that's why the parallels, although they're definitely imperfect. There's going to be a lot of times where we're going to have to poke holes and say this parallel cannot exist because of this. But it's the best you can get for that reason alone, right?
Sure.
And do you think that's coming about, in my mind at least, because it's kind of like market trends move with like baby boomers, for instance, in my mind. So for pop culture, everybody our age who grew up with these games is now at a point in their lives where they have careers and whatnot, and they have a little bit of finances sometimes, and they want to go back and they want to reminisce, and they can afford to come back and enjoy these things again. Do you think that age of like the release of a lot of this stuff plays a part?
Well, that's the general overall. That's the collectibles life cycle that goes with age and what can propagate it and move it past what a normal life cycle would be is resurrection of that, or making it more relevant again. So, you know, your average comic collector of Golden Age and Silver Age books is in their 60s and 70s now, right? But because of the resurrection of the Marvel Universe, you're now getting a whole new class of collector and a whole new generation of collectors who are collecting it for a different reason, not because they necessarily grew up with those stories, but because those stories represent the genesis and the birth of something that's relevant to them and their childhood, right? Whether it's the movies or the action or whatever they grew up with. I mean, you know, Spider-Man comics were published all through the 80s and 90s, even if it's not the first one, right? So anyways,
well, that kind of dwells with the historical instance then, you know, because people are going to want the Amazing Fantasy 15, regardless of what age they are, you know. Kids that's born today might want one in 30 years from now.
Right. And that's you know, the Library of Congress has all those comic books, you know, at least one example of them. But so it's, you know, that's where you're kind of now going into, well, there's an intersection of pop culture and history. American pop culture does become historical, right?
Absolutely.
But and by the way, comic books now, like 99.9% of all the comics published are garbage. They're absolutely worthless, right?
I'm sure some people would disagree with you.
No, I mean, I'm saying there are million. I mean, just like video games, there aren't like 700 for all of the NES. You know, you're talking about one, you know, one title in comics, and you've got thousands, and then over every year, you know, it's a sheer quantity. If you're looking at just the sheer quantity, the fraction.
We're in an era of manufactured collectibles too. I mean, that's a big part of it too. It's a tangent, but you know, manufactured limited editions.
Totally. And we can go and it's exciting because just the fact that we can go to all these little tangents here shows that we can talk about so much on this podcast. Right. But just that sliver, whatever percentage you think it is, the sliver of percent of comics that are actually worth a lot of money. It's a tiny fraction, but they are hotter than ever. They are worth more money than they ever were before, and they continue to climb because those are the ones that people care about. Right. And it goes back to the rarity thing. It's not the ones that are rare. It's the ones that are rare and significant to pop culture, relevant to pop culture. And that's the second factor in demand. And that's why I brought up this whole pop culture thing, because that is critical. Western comics are some of the rarest comic books, and they're cool, right? They're from the Platinum Age, before the Golden Age. But first of all, everyone who was interested in that stuff is either 80 plus or dead, unfortunately.
I mean, right now, you know, a similar parallel might be an Atari educational computer game that could be the rarest video game computer item out there, and it's worth $50 or less, you know, and that's it. There's a lot of that in video games too.
Right. But when you think about comic books or when you think about video games, that's not the thing that comes to your mind. You don't think about, you know, some obscure Apple II game or some obscure Platinum Age comic book, right?
Speak for yourself, man.
Okay. You don't think of some Channel F. I don't know. Whatever. You don't think of Pico, okay?
Hey, I have Pico games stored away.
Hey, Magic School Bus? Come on, Deniz.
I guarantee you some of those are really rare, but they're not going to have the price of something extremely common on NES. That's sealed.
Operation Wolf, right?
Because, you know, but okay, so we agree that we have rarity and we have relevance to pop culture, right? Now, I want to use another word that I think is the third most critical factor, which is relevance, not to pop culture, but relevance to collectors. And I make a big distinction there because we're seeing now, and a lot of, you know, old school collectors, which it's very easy to fall into old school these days, I guess. But, you know, are really confused by what's appreciated in the last year to 2 years with the influx of comic collectors or just new people coming into this hobby, right? And not realizing,
Mhm.
oh my God, video games. I grew up with video games, right?
Right.
And so it's like, why? Why are these things appreciating when in reality, this thing that was either super rare or this thing that collectors, video game collectors, considered a holy grail has not appreciated nearly as much.
Because nobody played Kizuna Encounters. That's why.
Because nobody played what?
Kizuna Encounters, the Neo Geo. I mean, everybody played Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
There's simply not enough sealed copies of popular games to go around for the amount of people that played them.
Or even something like stadium events.
Right.
Stadium events was always, it was rare, but it was also relevant to collectors. Like, you know, we've seen it appreciate, but not even close to how much Super Mario Bros. Sealed or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sealed.
Or Tyson.
Yeah,
sealed
Mike Tyson
has appreciated. When did video game collectors in the last decade ever say Tyson was the pinnacle of a collection, a sealed Tyson?
Well, you know, maybe a lot of these honestly just went overlooked, and they were undervalued at the time, you know, just because we were so focused on other games, and
we were focused on what was relevant to collectors. So I bring up, I think 3 games capture these three like as examples. They kind of epitomize each one of these. So you have Myriad, right, which is pure rarity, probably the rarest NES game. Not probably is. Well, unless you consider like some Sachin, huge, whatever, you know, like
hey, just
Sachin collectors.
Let's say Myriad.
Forget about those guys.
Myriad is a pirated game, so
Myriad has rarity, right? But it definitely doesn't have any relevance to pop culture. You can't walk up to anyone on the street and show them. Oh, it's relevant to, you know. I'm not going to say it's not relevant to collectors. The distinction I'm making is, well, there was always, well, it's not licensed, so it's not part of the set, right? So people didn't have to, collectors didn't have to have Myriad in order for them to have a complete NES set.
Well, so, even at that point, Myriad was also more or less a Caltron 6-in-1. So if you, just like people justify not having stadium events because they have a world-class track meet. You know, you don't need that stadium events because you have world-class track meet. I mean, it was the same thing with Myriad and Caltron. You could get a Caltron for $300, you know, for years. And why would you go and drop 4 Gs on a CIB Caltron or a Myriad when one came up?
Because you don't
just has a sticker slapped on it.
Yeah,
you know, a box and a number. But the cool thing with the Myriad, to a different point, is they were traceable. They have printed numbers on them, and it's been a tracked collectible since 2009 or 8 or whatever, when somebody on Nintendo Age started doing it.
Right.
So being able to track something like that is completely awesome and unique in a collectible.
You can't truly have your badge of honor unless you have the real one, though. So wasn't, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, and
that's worth. That's priceless. This badge of honor.
Myriad is the shit. I love that. It's got a cool history with Nintendo too. So
I love it.
Talk that game up all day long.
I love it too. But as the hobby grows, these are the factors that are going to keep driving the price of the demand and the price ultimately, right? So
right.
If we're talking like, again, why hasn't Myriad appreciated? It's because all it has going for it is that one aspect, rarity. Right? So
now,
stadium events. What about stadium events? Stadium events has rarity and it has relevance to collectors, right? Mm-hmm. But even still, it doesn't have the relevance to pop culture. It doesn't have that third element, which as a pop culture collectible, video games need to really transcend, to go to that next level of value and demand, essentially, for the masses. Because as the hobby grows, you're not going to have nearly as many hardcore collectors who care about all these little minutia and the details and the cool historical. It's what is reserved for the ultra nerds like us, right? And we're going to always comprise a small percentage of the majority of collectors. That's just how it is, right? Yep. I'm not saying this stuff isn't going to matter. It's just not going to matter as much as something that has all 3 elements.
Yeah, it's all going to matter. It's going to. I mean, I agree with you to an extent. You know, I think it comes down to a little bit of education and why. If you're a collector, you have this problem where you want to collect what you want to collect, right? And out of all these new people coming in and wanting to buy certain things for themselves, maybe 1 of 10 people will get the itch to go for a set, and then they'll learn more about it, and then they'll branch off and do different things, just like we did. And
Of course.
and that's where the cool part is there's a massive amount of education out there. I mean, the only reason I have what's in my head is I can retain the information well, and I've been around for a long time reading internet forums and participating in the community and in the video game culture at video game shows. I mean, that's really what it boils down to, just the amount of time I've been immersed in it.
Right. And we've seen that even with people that we know personally that have come into this hobby. A great example is Josh Enton. Mm-hmm. Remember when Josh came into this, he just wanted his childhood classics that he grew up with and that he remembers, just like everyone when they come into this. And a couple years later, he's taking the time to educate himself, learn about, what's significant, the more collector side of things, and he's branched out into all sorts of different, little facets within collecting, which is awesome, right? It's super cool.
I convinced him we should buy a game, John Romero copy of Castle Wolfenstein for Apple II that came up on eBay, and he bought it directly from John Romero and had him sign it. And 2 years ago, Josh would have been like, "Why do I want this?"
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So that's exactly it.
And he spent $1,000 on it because it's one of the coolest things in the world, in my opinion. But
and every day, and it'll keep happening for the next decade, 2 decades. Every day, there's new people getting into this hobby. Yeah. And over time, a lot of those people are gonna. The majority of them are never gonna go further than that phase 1 of collecting, where it's. You get 100 people that come into the hobby tomorrow. 90 of them are always just going to want Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Pokemon sealed, whatever. They're going to have a few games on their shelf that they grew up with and casually collect. But there's going to be those 10 who are going to go further and further into it. And some of these other factors like the rarity, the sheer rarity, or, the relevance to collectors are going to keep driving the value and demand of video games because those collectors will exist. At the end of the day, if there's something really unique, it takes 2 people, to determine the value of that. So
it does take 2
people. That's a whole separate topic.
Sam. Yeah.
Sam.
You know how often he just screws me out of winning something on eBay because I'm the underbidder, and then the top 2 bids are just because Sam and I win at it. So.
That's
And you cost yourselves both money.
Yeah, my dad once wanted to. He never bids on stuff. He never uses the internet. He's 72, so he's like he just missed that wave.
Your dad uses the internet. I talk to him sometimes on Facebook. No, he waved to me on Facebook Messenger. Yeah, he did a little wave emoticon.
That's shocking. That's shocking. Either way, why are you talking to my dad? Either way,
so he's cooler than you because you won't answer your phone.
He was bidding once. He wanted to bid on something that came up in, I think it was Heritage or something, some auction site, and it was the statue from Metropolis. It was some statue that was in the silent movie Metropolis, which was one of his. He's a big
Fritz Lang. Yeah.
And as soon as it started bidding, he when there was still like 5 days left, he was out. He was past this thing, but he kept following it, and it turns out the person who won it was, I think it was Paul Allen. So it was one of those situations where no matter how much he bid, it wasn't going to matter. There was someone who had unlimited pockets that was just going to, keep outbidding.
They're going to win it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it becomes the next highest bidder is going to determine the value.
The value of something.
Plus $1 or whatever it is,
Right.
Yeah. But anyways, going back, so we have rarity, we have relevance to collectors, and we have relevance to pop culture. Yep. And I think, as games are, being certified and as certification becomes more and more important, I think the last factor, in my opinion, to this equation is condition rarity. Obviously that doesn't matter when you're talking about something 1 of 1, but it's just another part of the equation that has to be considered where you're saying, well, what's the value of, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on NES versus the, something that isn't totally like, we're not talking about Myriad, but Contra or a black box game. It's like, okay, well, what variant of the black box game is it? And on the Turtles, is it a 9.8 or a 6.0? Because that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The 9.8, there's a huge condition rarity aspect there, and we see a huge multiplier in any collectible when you jump from, the 9.6 to the 9.8, or in cards from the 9 to the 9.5 to the 10. And so I think that's something else that it's not a focal point, but we have to keep it in our minds that it is one of the other factors at the end of the day.
Absolutely. My favorite part about collecting right now is the undervalued attention of mid grades on sealed items, which I just gobble up when I can. Mainly because, everybody's grading shit right now and getting stuff out there that has been sitting for years or already encapsulated by another company. And what they're doing is effectively just grading the best stuff they can right now. And it's only sustainable for so long because there's only going to be so many 9.0 and above sealed Dr. Stanley's or whatever game. There's just not going to be very many.
We're spoiled. I mean, we're spoiled.
We're very spoiled. They're like, somebody's like, I'm just going to wait for the next 9.6 to come along. I'm like, well, I'm going to buy any sealed Race America I can find. Sorry, because they don't exist sealed.
Yeah,
so,
Mark was talking about that back when in the WATA founding days, like how he was having conversations with people who'd be like, yeah, I'm waiting for a Captain America 1, but I'm waiting for like a 9.4 to come along. And then the guy's not like a comic collector. And Mark and someone else like looked at it and just started dying laughing because like, well, okay, like good luck.
Well, the same thing is relevant in video games. I mean, we would have that same probably the same reaction, Deniz, if somebody was like, well, I'm just waiting for the next 9.8 DuckTales 2 to show up. I'm like, okay, me too, but it's not going to be there.
The stuff exists. And the other thing is we're seeing, and this is one of the things that I find funny when I see people posting stuff that they're getting back from WATA online. You're seeing a lot of 9.8s. First of all, people like to post. People are not getting all 9.8s, but they like to post their 9.8s. But there's a huge selection bias or affirmation bias, whatever it is, like in terms of what people send in. So it's also one of the things that comes up with population reports is people always ask, why haven't we released them, et cetera, et cetera. We want them to tell a story, but we also don't want them to be misleading if we can't qualify them. If you looked at our population reports, you would think that Super Mario Bros. 3, the left bros, is the common one because people aren't sending in the right bros. Not sealed, just
in general. Yeah, right. Everybody's sending in the one that sells.
Right. So. Well, it's because that's
cool
the one that, and also we're seeing people at definitely in the first couple of years. Not that we're much past that, but people were sending in the cream of the crop, the absolute best stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we're still seeing that. But a lot of people coming into this now have a very clouded kind of perspective on what exists, I think, and what to expect from a condition standpoint. Yeah. People think that everything, achieving a 9.4 or higher is pretty attainable on most of the games they have. When in reality, they're not. Most sealed games.
It's because they all came out of the case packs from Dove, man.
I remember those auctions.
Do you remember like you could get Mega Man for Game Boy for like $40?
I also remember a Super Mario World selling for I think $10,000, and it like broke the internet. I mean. And just think now.
Or a gold NWC selling for $8,700 and everybody's losing their mind.
Well, Super Mario World was, I don't know, $800,000, $1,200 game.
Right. I mean, it was a couple years ago too.
It was it would have been a 9.8 A++. Because remember Dove. So for people who don't know, Dove had. I mean, Josh, you would remember the backstory better than I do. It was his family, grandfather.
He was like in a distribution, and he got his hands on all these sealed Nintendo games.
And 08, 09, 09,
08. And,
it was 9 because that's right when I came in because I was buying them and I was like, oh, you guys are talking about them too.
Yeah, it was about that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So he started listing, and he started with the bet because he would have like 10, 20, 30 of some
Stuff.
games.
And the thing is it wasn't just on eBay. You could just reach out to him and he would sell you stuff through Nintendo Age. I mean, that was the best. Man, you could.
I remember putting in $20 bids on some games once he got to like the third, fourth round because he did like $20 bids just on everything. Just saying, you know,
bubble goes for $20. Yeah.
And you would win. You'd win like 6 games. It's like,
man.
Yeah.
I was like, God damn, I have to pay this guy $800 now. Like, I didn't mean to, but I won them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those were the days. Yeah.
Those were the days, and you know
the days are today actually, and we're gonna look
back
in 10 years and be like, man, why don't we buy every one of those for $1,000?
Yeah, people are gonna be looking. We're gonna, you know, that's not gonna go on forever.
No, I understand.
There are certainly, and this is something I need to say, there are going to be major adjustments that are going to happen down the line. Right now, we are at a FOMO, you know, fear of missing out, like rush with people and games, and the supply hasn't caught up to the demand, meaning there's so much demand coming in, and over time, and this is another discussion, whether we have it now or not, but over time, some of this stuff, you know, the supply is fixed. Whatever was printed was printed. Mm-hmm. And the demand is shifting, right? The actual full demand is shifting. So the quantity supplied is going to go up. Whether that's warehouse finds or, you know, people literally reading articles and saying, oh my God, these games are worth money, and going in their attics. It's the same thing that happened in comics. It's, you know, all of the biggest pedigrees and comic collections were found after certification came and you know, things started, you know, prices started going up to where people were like, I have a reason to go find this stuff. That's my belief. I believe this stuff is still out there. I've had arguments with people who don't believe that. I think that's absolutely not true. I'm not saying there's, you know, 50 warehouses in every major city sitting with brand new sealed NES games. I'm not saying that.
No.
But no. I think there's case packs of some of these games that we think there's population of 1 or 2. That's not possible. A market cannot be built around that. And that actually was the other game I was going to bring up in the Rarity. So we have Rarity, Relevance, Rarity, Relevance, right? Or Relevance, Relevance, Rarity, Rarity. Relevance to pop culture, relevance to collectors, rarity, and condition rarity. The thing that kind of brings all of that together, and I said this on the Pawn Stars episode, saying it was the trifecta, was that Mario. But I kind of want to make an amendment to that in a way, because Mario, sealed Mario, or a hang tab Mario is the best example in my opinion. Forward, I own one, so I'm biased, right? Obviously, I want it to be worth more. But at the end of the day, it's rare. It's the rare version of that game, the hang tab version. There's, you know, 4 different, whatever. There's many hang tab versions. Just in general, if you break it down to the major.
A hang tab, yeah.
Hang tab Mario is rare, okay? Talk about relevant to collectors. You got the fact that it's black boxed and that most collectors at the end of the day, you know, it's Mario. It's the start of the biggest franchise ever. And for pop culture, start of the biggest franchise ever. You can bring Mario to anyone on the street and show them the game, and they'll know what it is. They'll be able to hum you the intro to the game, you know, whatever it is. So I think that is one that brings all of that together. But I think the sticker sealed Mario, and I bring this up because we were just kind of touching on it, isn't the same because it's one, two, whatever's out there. It's 3. So rare
3,
that a market cannot be built around it. You know what I mean? Like if you're talking,
it's just like some weird 1-of-1 limited edition Mike Trout baseball card, I guess.
Yeah, and
I'm just
Mike Trout. You have that? Can I buy it?
No, I don't like baseball.
No. Someone was just posting the other day about this.
Yeah, I know.
The baseball card that has a $500,000 bounty.
Or the Zion Williamson.
The Zion card, yeah.
He's okay. He's fine. I don't whatever.
And by the way, that's another topic: manufactured rarity, or you know, whatever.
I know, man. I love that.
Anyways,
there's so many things right now, this day and age, that people are just throwing away, and like you said, another topic conversation that should be and will be collectible because people just throw them in the garbage. And that's the best part about a video game.
And that's what becomes collectible. That's what becomes
throw it away.
collectible.
It's garbage, you know.
It's meant to be dispensed.
Yeah, not only it's
was,
packaging.
If it was meant to be collected, it never became. And that's why I think Funko Pops will never be sustainable long term. They are our modern day equivalent of Beanie Babies.
Yeah, Beanie Babies, sure.
Which came out, and they were marketed as a collectible, and that's why everyone bought them, and that's why people sadly invested their kids' college fund into it, and lost everything. It's the stuff that you were supposed to throw away. It's the tobacco cards. It's the what's some of the rarest or most expensive baseball cards from back then now. It's the checklists. The ones that you got in the pack and you threw out, it's like, I don't want this thing.
No, you're right. You're right. And that's just it. There's stuff like that today, that people don't even think about. And I love that because I buy it.
And NES games, the boxes, especially Game Boy games.
VHS
games. I mean,
VHS tapes. Everybody throws their VHS away. It's my favorite thing in the world. They're so cheap.
So mass produced.
would a fifth factor, as I'm thinking about this, not be also to add to your list the story behind it? Because stories, to me, I mean, I've seen things when the story comes out of nowhere. I've seen the value of certain things go up.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That comes down to education. I think Myriad will have its day still. I mean, NTDEC, Megasoft, the company that created Caltron or marketed Caltron in the U.S., they were sued by Nintendo. They had a shipment full of pirated video games come into, I want to say, Long Beach, and Nintendo called the news, seized the shipment, and destroyed it on the live television news, like the evening news. They destroyed the container of it. Wow. That company that eventually went on to do Caltron, and got it into the States. And so there's a lot of neat history there that people haven't even considered yet. And it's all about the education and the story.
Yeah, it's all about the education. And Matt, I think the story feeds into one of the relevances. So either the relevance to collectors or to pop culture, or both. I mean, look at E.T., right? Like, I was shocked to find out what those landfill copies that, when they came up, it was crazy when they were selling for $700, $800.
I want one now. I didn't want one then. I want one now.
They're thousands of dollars now.
I want one though.
And it's because the story became more mainstream. They made a movie about it. They made, now it's like E.T. is synonymous with the video game crash, even though it was just a small catalyst. And people, like, I have conversations with people about video games that they know nothing about collecting video games, but they go, "Oh, that E.T. game. That what about that E.T. game?" They know, right? So that story, in their case, that story made it relevant to pop culture. It made it relevant to someone off the street that wouldn't otherwise know anything about collectible video games. It made it more relevant to collectors who already knew the story about the crash. But now here's something tangible that I can actually have that, was from, I guess, just that one dump. Again, I'm not saying whether it means anything to me or not, but I do see how it means something to a lot of people, right? It's a part of history, I guess.
Yeah, well, E.T. means a lot to people.
Maybe
a lot of people's childhoods.
Maybe our podcast will set new trends by educating people in these, and we don't purposely, I know that we don't purposely talk about things to raise the value of them, but our podcast could, in fact, because we're telling the story of these games, educate people more, which then in fact could affect the value as well.
We should just talk about Myriad a little more because
I'll always be honest. I think we should be talking about Game Boy more. But I'm about to complete the set. I'm biased. I'll share my biases, but the reason I love Game Boy is because the boxes like people kept their NES boxes to store the games in them. Game Boy was a portable system.
I think that has a lot to do with it. Also, a lot of what drove Nintendo in the 80s and 90s was the rental market. And rental stores were not renting Game Boy games or Game Gear games or any handheld games. So these are, I would say, quite a bit more hard to find. I don't know if rarity is the right term, but some of them are downright rare, but hard to find in comparison. The relative rarity is way larger, way bigger, I guess, than NES or Super Nintendo boxes.
Yep.
Just based on what the market was and who they marketed to and how it was marketed.
Right.
So
and I just think it's cool though. That's why I started collecting. They're small. The art's beautiful. I played a lot of Game Boy as a kid. But
if you're a collector, they're hard as hell to find. So.
Matt, I definitely think that could be a side effect of these conversations.
Yeah.
So we'll just accused of, manipulating the market.
That's the goal.
We'll probably get accused of a lot of things, but at least in the first episode.
I hope so. Man, I love it. I love people. Mostly I love people, but mostly I hate them. So.
I mean, people can say what they want, but I'm at least going to throw out there that that's not the intent of this podcast.
And I'll say that I will always try to be as transparent about any biases I have, or
I'll always try to shoot down your biases, Deniz. So.
Yeah, call me out on my shit.
I will. Well, I truly believe that even items like Atari games that people think there are just millions and millions of, they're just so wrong about it, because it also comes back to what you did talk about. Condition.
Yeah.
Relevance and rarity. And their condition on a lot of these, that there are supposedly 30,000 copies or 100,000 copies of Miss Pac-Man. I'll pay up for a 9.8 Miss Pac-Man because I can't find one.
Yeah. It's I don't think people realize, especially if people follow heritage auctions, that first auction that happened, they're just freaking out over prices and whatnot. But man, those were the mint of the mint. I mean,
some of them, but yeah.
Just ordering games now. I mean, and you got to remember, a lot of Atari collectors, I've run into this at least 10 or 20 times in the past couple of months. They're old school, and they're very sometimes they're still about saving money, because Atari games traditionally are not worth a lot, or weren't. So when they ship stuff, guess what? They send them in bubble mailers. I can't count how many Atari games I've gotten in bubble mailers, and the value just went to trash because they get trashed. And
to that point, also the massive companies out there, the O'Shea's and the My Atari, the guys in California that have the stock of this stuff, or Video 61, they have this stuff, and they've been being picked from for the last 20 years of their items, and they've been breaking case packs, and they've been selling these games for $15 to $30 to Atari collectors who get them and open them and play them. They're not keeping them sealed. So I think it's interesting. Yeah, 30,000 is a big number at one point. In 1996, that's a large number. But when you find out that the company goes and scraps everything.
Well, I mean, again, it's like how demanded is this stuff going to actually be? I mean,
right, yeah.
I remember having a conversation with Mark about, he would tell me about this random book that I didn't even know about, called Nova Number One. And he would say in the even all the way up to through the 90s up to the early 2000s, you could find people would have long boxes of them, and they were selling them for, I don't know, $10 a piece for 9.8. What would be a 9.8? You can't get a 9.8 for less than $1,000 now. And it's the same deal. It's like sale, but case pack Spider-Man, $10 a pop. For someone to fathom, that's going to be worth, you can't touch that for $1,000. It's hard for us to fathom some of those things. It's still hard for me, super hard as a collector. I'm still a collector, for me to wrap my head around what, the things I didn't get that I still want, what I might have to pay for them. And I find myself so often being like, I just can't do it. It's always been like that, right? But you have to, after a certain point, say, am I going to keep doing this next decade and the decade after that? Because it's a decade later. I was saying that about the gray Majora's Mask, not for resales, when I could buy them for $200-300. Then it was $500. Then it was $1,000. Now, God, what are they now? $2-3 grand? I don't even know. And then I was saying it about Pokemon games recently. I was like, man, I should have bought them all day long for $300-400. And now I can't even. I have a full Game Boy set. I have all these rare sealed ones. I don't have a sealed Pokemon Red or Blue. And it's like,
They were
What am I
common,
gonna
man.
spend- What?
You know, it's to the point also that, you know, you see something at one point as a collector, like a stadium events. I mean, one sold for $500, and my whole justification is, oh, I'll just get the next one.
Yeah.
And after that, it was never $500 again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've definitely done that with a few Halo items where I was like, oh yeah, it was 60. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just find another one. Oh, it's 200. Oh, that's overpriced. Oh, the next one sold for 350. I'm like, crap. And so I pull 500 on the next one and I'm thinking I got a deal. Yeah. As it grows and becomes more popular.
It's tough to gauge for us what we really think, because there are instances where if we wait long enough, it actually will cool off, or there will be an opportunity. What?
Right. It will.
So it's tough to gauge that. I mean, like you have Pokemon, you have these Atari games that some of us know are really common, and those prices that were realized in Heritage are not sustainable in the immediate future or even the medium term, right? Like they're just not. They're not. You can find them. They're out there. But something like Pokemon sealed, for me, I'm like,
I don't necessarily agree with you, but that's okay. That's fine.
Well, that's good. We should be agreeing on some of this stuff. But Pokemon sealed, I'm like, it's rare enough to where it's not like those Atari games, and it has so much legs on it. Pokemon is never not going to be hot anymore.
Well, either Spider-Man. I mean, that's what you can be saying the same thing. Then Spider-Man will always be hot.
Yep.
There are in a different way, but Pokemon has spawned. I mean, just the cards alone are a separate facet of collecting that are spawned from the video game. The video game came first in Japan, you know. And you have all these kids. You have Pokemon Go. You have the Pikachu movie. That's 30 years ahead of when movies started coming out for Marvel Comics in the relative to the cycle.
I don't disagree with you about Pokemon one bit.
He's talking about Atari.
Atari in general. I mean, I think it's when you just say these Atari games, you're lumping them all into one. So I just be careful because they're legitimate rarities and legitimate.
I was talking about the ones that realized insane prices on Heritage.
Yeah, they did.
That
did
we're not.
Price. I don't disagree.
I'm talking about the Frogger. I'm not talking about the Sword Quest necessarily. You know, I'm not talking about things that are legitimately rare and relevant to Atari collectors. Going back to the relevance thing.
Sure.
I'm talking about things that simply had relevance to pop culture, and that was the only thing that was driving it for essentially uneducated buyers at the time.
Well, I mean, the same could be said about the Zelda 2 that sold in that. I mean,
I disagree with that.
What's that?
Yeah,
well, I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah. Anyways, this is fun. We should do this again.
We will do this again, I hope.
yeah. Well, we can get everybody together.
All right, one episode. It was fun,
guys.
Yeah,
one episode. See you next year.
All right.
Well, this was a good conversation for sure, and it's good that we keep this about an hour. Past that, I think people's attention span goes out the door anyway.
Mine does. I mean, that's why I'm trying to get off the phone right now.
You got to go jump in that pool.
No, the problem is Wade's doing the eBay searches right now, and I'm missing all the shit. So, and I'm talking Sunday afternoon
all day.
Wade, please leave
trying to list and buy stuff on eBay.
Wade, please leave a comment below on what you think about that. Say thank you. Thank you.
And Sam's doing it too. So I'm just missing all the good shit right now. So. Okay,
well,
PC, the good stuff. Sorry.
We have so much to talk about. I'm glad we were able to establish. We agree, right? Like on the factors that go into demand, right? So we can talk about them again, right? The relevance to collectors, the relevance to pop culture, the rarity, and the condition rarity. The four R's: the rarity, relevance, relevance. And we can bring those up in future discussions. I think it'll come up a lot. But some of the things that we talked about, the three of us. We can go into so many different facets of collecting from here, whether it's about the market, whether it's about specific things that are happening, relevant things, relevant sales, timely stuff. We can talk about art. We can talk about just so many different. I don't even have
sports video games.
I had a list here. I don't even have a list.
I just want to talk about sports video games.
Talk about sports video games. Why are
David
they-
Robinson basketball, man.
Oh my
Man,
gosh!
I was
All right,
thinking-
now we're to the pitching part.
You want to talk about underpriced attention? Sports video games.
Josh's next episode, he's gonna have like 5,000 sports games.
Yeah, you need
talk about
this,
sports,
and you
dude.
need this.
I might not like baseball watching. I will buy sports video games. So, well, let me take that back. I like Ken Griffey Jr.'s Major League Baseball on Super Nintendo. That was a wonderful game.
For me, I was all about Slugfest.
Yeah, it's because
I
you
never
weren't
got
alive
to-
when the first one came out. So
Come on, what about Baseball Stars? One of the greatest games all time.
RPG baseball is pretty cool. Yeah.
Is Tony Hawk considered sports? Because if so, I'm amending to say Tony Hawk's too. Tony Hawk.
Skateboarding is not a sport. No, I'm just kidding.
And let the hate mail begin. All
right,
right.
Also,
Let's
BMX riding.
let's end on a fun note. Actually, what's the video game? The top 3 video games you spent the most time ever on? The most logged hours for you.
The most logged hours.
Yeah, it's got to be all 3, like just Halo.
Zelda
Halo,
2.
Halo.
Zelda
Zelda-
2, really?
Zelda 2.
What?
Yeah, I probably played that,
What?
over and over again.
I think we need to kick him off the panel or something.
I know.
I like
I
that
love
game.
Zelda 2. I'm one of those.
I do too. I mean, it created the open world kind of format of Link to the Past. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
you
and then
could
they
you could beat
melted
it.
everything.
You could beat it in like a couple hours.
Doesn't mean when you're 7 years old, you can't beat it in a couple hours. So
It took
You
me a
gotta
day. It took me a day.
ask people on the
All
back of the bus how to do it. So Zelda 2, I don't know. I played Manhunt on Xbox a lot.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's a weird
Wow,
one.
these
That's
are
kind of a
weird
morbid game.
answers, dude.
I don't know. I've played a lot of video games.
So Zelda 2, Manhunt, and what's your third?
Those are just ones I remember playing a lot. I don't know. Probably Oregon Trail on Apple II.
Ooh, man, there's a classic. All right, Dennis, what are yours? I already know one of them.
Oh, and then now probably Animal Crossing on the Switch with my daughter. So we play that all the time.
We're gonna go with Oregon Trail.
Yeah, I
Animal
like
Crossing is fun. You know, she leaves and I keep playing it.
Matt, what's the one you already know from me?
Final Fantasy VII.
You know, I was gonna say that, but honestly, it might be up. It's either that for one of the two. It's gonna be either that or Ocarina, because I've played the there's this Ocarina of Time randomizer thing that like only the true gamers will know about, but it gives it a lot of replay value. It like randomizes everything. It's like a new, and I've done that, so I've logged an extra hundreds of hours. But it definitely
We need a nerd alert button for that one.
That's okay.
The Ocarina of Time randomizer, I actually, my Twitch channel is super nice fan of it.
So
number 1 and number 2 are definitely Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 is number 2, and number 1 has to be
I
Red
played
Alert,
a lot of that.
Red Alert 2.
I played a lot of that too.
wow.
Red Alert 2, I by far have never
Wow.
more hours on anything else. Has to be that.
And that's a newer game.
Matt, what about you?
No, that's not.
That's a newer game.
Now,
Like
the
naive
Twin Towers were on the original box art, so
Yeah.
if that's considered new, then
Okay.
It's a newer game.
that's a
Matt
new-
stopped at Sega Master System. So
No, because I think we're gonna hear a couple Halo titles here.
Just
Halo 1.
all Halo. Yeah,
Halo
Halo
2,
1,
Halo
Halo
2,
2, Halo
Halo
3. That's not true, though.
Oh,
I would say my most played games, I would say Halo 3 is definitely the top. I would say probably Modern Warfare 3 being the second. I used to think it was Nintendo games. If we went to Nintendo, man, it's kind of a split between Super Dodgeball, Bionic Commando, or Super Sprint. Actually, I think I've logged the most time, which is a weird one.
that is a weird.
easy.
one.
I love that game. So I'd say
You have Rad Racer or Super Sprint. You're picking Super Sprint.
yeah, Super Sprint was just so much fun because you could play with a friend And if you knew how to manipulate it, you could have your friends sit at the gate areas and run the computer off and make him have to relap.
Yeah.
So it'd buy you some time.
Dennis never played that one because he didn't have any friends.
That was one of the reasons.
That was one of the reasons.
I
And you
also
weren't born.
wasn't alive.
And you weren't born.
I was a zygote, like my dad's ball sack.
Hey, now.
And now we have to give the channel a rating of.
Oh, no, well, we could just cut the podcast off right before.
We'll just bleep you there. Yeah, so Halo, Modern Warfare, and probably Super Sprint, which is weird, but
You know, I played probably, you know, I played so many games, a lot of games, logged a lot of hours. Mario 64, I logged a ton of hours on, I remember. I mean, because I would replay these games over and over again.
Well,
Mario 3, Mario Land, you know, I just played them for hours. So, new Super Mario Brothers Wii. My God, yeah, I played that like a 7-year-old Japanese boy. I mean, I just sat down and played it all.
Oh, that just reminded me. Yeah, I played The Godfather on PS2 like an insane amount.
Oh yeah,
That's
a good game.
That's a good game. That's a good underrated game. I played one of the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. I played that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some random ones actually now that I think about it.
What about something like it was on every system, but something like, I think it was Amiga mainly, but like Stunt Racer. Gosh, we used to play that for hours. Or sit down. Or pole position. Man, we used to go to the pizza parlor.
We used to play Excite Bike all the time. Build tracks.
They really failed when you couldn't save anything on that.
Yeah. And you just had to do it again.
Yeah, they just need to report that and recreate it.
Mm-hmm.
So Nintendo, if you're listening, we've got some suggestions for redos on games, and you could resell them.
They're going to be listening to our first episode.
I got more suggestions for Nintendo than you even know.
Yeah, but at that point, we should definitely cut it, just because we're just over an hour. But that was pretty awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations on getting all three of us in the same podcast at the same time.
Big endeavor. Just people should know that.
It took months.
We should do one of these at 5 a.m. And I first have my coffee.
It took months just to get this one to happen. So hopefully we have number 2. And thank you for listening. And leave your comments, questions either below, email us, or eventually there will be a website coming up here where you can leave your questions, comments there in the future.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the day.